Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. Today we're diving straight into one of the absolute highest stakes geopolitical standoffs in recent memory. We're talking about a wildly tense 29-day diplomatic waiting game between the United States and Iran, a standoff that literally had global markets holding their breath. We're going to unpack the massive military claims, the leaked diplomatic documents, and the massive economic shockwaves of this geopolitical chess match. And look, we're going to rely purely on the facts and the direct rhetoric from both sides. We really want to focus on exactly how the world's expectations clashed, and I mean violently clashed, with reality. So here's our roadmap for today. 1. The breakdown of talks. 2. America's bold claims. 3. Iran's 10-point response. 4. Red lines and nuclear rights. And 5. The global economic fallout. Let's get right into it. Part 1. The breakdown of talks. The 29-day waiting game. Okay, to really grasp the climax of this situation, we've got to understand the buildup. And honestly, what's so striking here is just how incredibly compressed this whole crisis actually was. The initial conflict sparked on February 28th and raged for roughly 40 days. By the night of April 7th going into the 8th, a ceasefire was agreed upon and put into place. Fast forward just a few days to April 11th, and delegations met in Islamabad, Pakistan, for what turned out to be a grueling 21-hour marathon negotiation session. But at the end of those 21 hours, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance announced that the talks had completely failed, flat out stating that the U.S. had given its final and best offer. That announcement right there triggered a nail-biting 29-day waiting period, which finally wrapped up on May 11th when Iran submitted its official response. Moving on to Part 2, America's bold claims. Military dominance. During that massive 29-day waiting period, the rhetoric coming from the U.S. set expectations sky high. After April 12th, President Donald Trump publicly claimed immense military dominance. We're talking sweeping assertions. Claims that the U.S. had destroyed the Iranian Navy, completely blown up the Revolutionary Guard headquarters, and entirely decimated Iran's Air Force missile defense and communication systems. The messaging to the American public and the world was basically that Iran had been severely, permanently weakened. Because of this, widespread predictions swept through U.S. media outlets, places like Axios and the Wall Street Journal, predicting that Iran was just about to sign a one-page memo. The expectation? A formalized total surrender. Now, this perfectly illustrates the massive gap between expectation and reality. On the left side here, you see what the world was bracing for, a rumored signing ceremony in Pakistan where Iran would just surrender its nuclear program, hand over all its enriched uranium, and destroy its underground facilities in exchange for phased financial relief. But on the right, that's the unseen reality that actually landed on the president's desk on May 11th. It wasn't a surrender at all. Actually, it was a totally defiant counterproposal. Which brings us to Part 3, 10-point response, a defiant stance. Even before the actual details of that document leaked out, everyone kind of knew things had gone totally off script. Why? Well, President Trump took straight to Truth Social and posted this exact quote. "I have just read the response from Iran's so-called representatives. I don't like it. Totally unacceptable. Thank you for your attention to this matter." That post immediately signaled to global markets and international watchers that the anticipated capitulation was absolutely off the table. So, what made it so totally unacceptable? Well, unofficial reports of Iran's 10-point message paint a picture of a really bold reassertion of dominance. Iran outright declared the U.S. as the primary source of regional instability and flat-out demanded the U.S. military exit the region. They claimed U.S. bases couldn't even protect themselves, let alone the Gulf states. And most importantly, they framed Persian Gulf security as an exclusive right of regional states with a shared destiny, declaring foreign powers entirely unwelcome. Essentially, Iran framed its own influence as the new, non-negotiable regional order. Talk about flipping the script. And, as if that diplomatic document wasn't forceful enough on its own, it was accompanied by a very physical message. Reports indicated that right alongside this 10-point response, unexpected drone activity was detected. Military drones were dispatched to the southwest region and the UAE. Obviously, this dramatically escalated the immediate tension on the ground. Let's look at Part 4, Nuclear Rights, Non-Negotiable Bounds. At the absolute core of this entire standoff is the nuclear question. And if there is just one sentence that captures the entire Iranian strategy during this period, it is this one right here. Iranian officials communicated this core philosophical stance: we cannot give you at the negotiating table what you cannot win from us on the battlefield. That perfectly explains why they walked away from billion-dollar relief packages. From their perspective, they hadn't been defeated, so they completely refused to negotiate as if they had. And this defiant posture wasn't just behind closed doors, it was echoed very publicly. Get this, the Iranian embassy in Zimbabwe posted this incredibly stark warning. We stand ready for any miscalculation by the enemy. A fair reminder, don't test our resolve again. To test the tested is a fatal mistake. To really drive the point home, this was posted alongside images of destroyed aircraft. It was a clear, unmissable public signal that Iran was doubling down.
And that right there brings us to the total collapse of the nuclear aspect of the deal. Iran basically flat out refused to surrender its nuclear rights. They completely rejected the demand to hand over their massive stockpile of 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium. Interestingly enough, Russia even stepped in with an off-ramp, offering to take and hold the uranium stockpiles to kind of save face for everyone involved, but Iran completely dismissed that too. In response to all of this, President Trump explicitly vowed that the U.S. would never allow Iran to possess nuclear weapons, heavily hinting at the potential for renewed military strikes.
Pivoting now to Part 5, Economic Fallout, Global Repercussions. So, with military threats back on the table and diplomacy totally stalled out, the battlefield shifted directly to the global markets. Following those failed talks in mid-April, the U.S. deployed its most potent economic weapon, a severe naval blockade. The U.S. administration boldly predicted this would inflict a crippling $500 million daily loss on Iran. Officials even claimed that unexported oil would cause Iranian oil wells to literally burst by late April. However, Iranian officials, like Abbas Araghchi, very publicly mocked these claims when late April came and went without any collapse of their infrastructure. And guys, we absolutely cannot ignore the sheer scale of the money involved here, $1 trillion. That is the staggering estimated modern-day value of Iran's currently frozen global assets. To put that into perspective, this number highlights the massive financial stakes at play. By refusing to sign the U.S. deal, Iran is actively choosing to leave $1 trillion locked away, underscoring just how strictly they are adhering to their strategic red lines. But here's the thing. The mismatch in this war of attrition is absolutely staggering. According to internal CIA assessments cited in the sources, Iran is structurally positioned to endure this economic blockade for up to 4 months before feeling a critical, destabilizing burn. But look at the rest of the world. Global markets are facing an immediate shock, with fears that oil could skyrocket to $150 or even $200 per barrel. And we're already seeing the local reality hitting hard. In neighboring Pakistan, petrol prices have already skyrocketed to crushing levels of over 412 rupees per liter. And this prolonged instability, it's not just an economic issue anymore. It's becoming a huge reputational one. A recent survey from the Alliance of Democracies Foundation over in Denmark highlights falling U.S. credibility on the global stage. Interestingly, a really significant portion of international respondents are actually beginning to view American policies and the resulting global instability as a top global risk itself. Which brings us to the ultimate question, the so what of it all. If a 4-month war of economic attrition is technically sustainable for Iran, but threatens to be entirely devastating to global oil markets and regional economies right now, who is actually going to be forced to blink first? The geopolitical chessboard is set, the stakes literally could not be higher, and the financial clock is ticking. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing the data, and I'll see you next time.